I welcome the opportunity to contribute to this debate, and I welcome the fact that the Minister is here to take the debate. Look, livestock exports are a critical part of the agriculture sector in this country. There is no doubt about that. Live shipping provides a very significant competitive component to the market for weanling and store cattle, particularly focusing on the west of Ireland and in the county that I represent, County Clare. Live shipping provides a very important level of competition, which ensures that farmers get a valuable price for their produce. Without live shipping, Irish farmers would suffer very considerably reduced cattle prices. It's estimated this year that the involvement of live shipping has ensured that cattle prices are about 70 to 120 euros ahead of what they would be in the absence of live shipping. So that's very significant. And it's about 6 to 8 euros of a difference in relation to sheep. So the news this week, Cathaoirleach, that TLT, one of the country's largest exporters, has gone into receivership is extremely worrying, first and foremost for all those who owed money by the company involved, whether they be cattle marts or whether they be large producers who would have dealt directly with them. I'm sure it's very worrying for the workforce in Mullingar, some 30 I believe, who work for the company, and I'm sure it's disturbing for the owners of the company themselves. But it's particularly worrying for livestock producers, as I said, concentrated in the west of Ireland, very many in my constituency of County Clare, who are in beef production and who are in the suckler cow schemes, who are producing calves and weanlings and store cattle, which there isn't an appropriate level of land in the country to finish, and therefore they must be exported to ensure that there's a healthy trade. Farmers who, in the absence of a solid livestock export trade, will have to take prices of less to the tune of about 120 euros. And that's not viable. Livestock farming, where the suckler cow is involved in the production of the calves, if they have to take a reduction in prices of to the tune of 120 euros, they will not be viable. Now, this country has a very solid programme for the development of our beef sector, Harvest 2020. And unless the government intervene without delay to protect livestock exports, then we're not going to be able to achieve that level of production. It will impact on the targets that are set out in 2020. So I would appeal to the Minister for the government to involve themselves. You have to look to export credit refunds. You've got to look to various different schemes and mechanisms how you can promote and support the work of livestock.
Thank you, Deputy Robert Troy.
I want to follow on to what my colleague has said in terms of the need for a robust livestock export industry in our country. And I think with the potential elimination of TLT based in my own constituency, which up until heretofore accounted for approximately 60 to 70% of our live port industry, it's very timely that we have this debate here today. It's crucial for the farming sector that we have a competing live export trade to ensure that we have competition and that factories are not in an over-dominant position on an island economy. We are all fully aware that the agri-food industry is worth over 1 billion per annum. It's extremely important that the Minister takes a hands-on approach to this issue and works with the receiver and ensures that the business survives and Mullingar continues to be a hub for live export industry of Ireland. As my colleague has said, there's in excess of 30 people directly employed by TLT International in Mullingar who have been let go over the last number of days, and many, many more indirectly employed. There's a huge anxiety and concern out there among the farming community, among the Marts, and we need to take steps, as happens in the travel industry, to ensure that the Marts and the farmers are not left out of pocket. Can I ask and just say that it's imperative that the government moves quickly to work with the receiver to ensure that we resuscitate the business as a going concern as part of the broader live export trade, in particular the cattle links to the Italian market.
Thank you. Minister, to reply.
Can I thank both Deputy Dooley and Troy for giving me the opportunity of maybe setting the record straight in the Dáil in relation to TLT. I would like at the outset to share what the Deputy's concern of this unfortunate turn of events for TLT International, a company that has served the live export trade well over the decades. TLT has been a significant player in the export of live cattle to the continent, accounting for about 20% of total exports, 20,800 in 2012 and 12,400 up to the end of September this year. I would like also to express my sympathy for the 25 workers as well as the farmer suppliers to TLT, and indeed other creditors who may be at risk of incurring losses as a result of this receivership. There are also other people, temporary employment on whom this will impact negatively, and my concern is for them also. However, I am very heartened by the positive comments made on Morning On Ireland by the ICOS representative this morning, that Marts have historically paid the farmers during the period of worst crisis and will continue to do so. And that is, as I think, is a clear acknowledgement of where the intention is. With regard to the receivership, my understanding is that the company has been placed in receivership by the AIB and HSBC banks, who are owed significant amounts of money. I also understand that the company had advanced a number of reasons for its financial difficulty, including the slow Italian economy, rising cattle prices in Ireland, and delays in securing payment from customers. I am sure that the House will understand that neither I nor my department can interfere in the operations of the receiver, and I think that's very important, that they cannot interfere in the operations of the receivers. The position is that the role of a receiver appointed to companies in distress, which is set down in law, is to establish the assets and liabilities of a company, and in particular to realise and receive assets in the hope that debts outstanding to the holders which appointed him or her can be met. The powers of a receiver are essentially to manage the business of a company, carry it on and realise assets so as to repay the people that are owed the money. As I stated in my opening remarks, TLT has been a significant player in the export of live cattle to the continent. In particular, it has been dominant Irish exporter of weanlings to the Italian market, accounting for approximately 70% of Irish exports to that market in recent years, and he has been a great player, in fact, in that whole area, in that whole market. Clearly, the placing of TLT in receivership is very unfortunate, but I do not believe that it places the live export trade in jeopardy. As I have said, the company has played an important role in the live export trade, and it is likely that the absence of this company from the marketplace will have some impact on the weaning market. However, I do not believe that the impact on the weaning market will be very significant, particularly in view of the fact that traditionally the peak weaning export trade takes place in early autumn. In addition, exports of live cattle from Ireland to Italy have declined significantly in recent years, mainly as a result of higher prices here in Ireland, which means our cattle are less price competitive for live exports. The economic recession in Italy has also impacted significantly on consumer demand for beef in that market. Live exports to Italy to date in 2013 have been some 23,000. This is back from the 33,100 during the same period in 2012. In total, there are some 37,900 cattle exported from Ireland to Italy in 2012, back from 53,000 in 2011, 70,000 in 2012. It is clear, therefore, that the Italian market has actually been declining in importance in recent years. I should also emphasise that there are quite a few live exporters still in business, and they are capable of taking up some of the slack. Exporters in Ireland have shown great flexibility in the past to respond to market demand whenever it confronted them. So I would be hopeful that in the medium to long term, the remaining exporters will fill the void by the departure of TLT. In conclusion, I would like to reiterate my regret at the placing of TLT in receivership, but I do not believe that there will be a major impact on the live export trade.
Thank you, Minister. Deputy Timmy Dooley.
Well, I hope you're right, Minister, but I think differently, because the failure of this company underlines a significant weakness in the protections that exist for people who take that risk. It's interesting that the bank concerned here is the Hong Kong and Shanghai Banking Corporation. It doesn't appear that this organisation was able to get a relevant supply of credit from the domestic pillar banks. So I have no intention of asking you, Minister, to break the law or to involve yourself with the receivership. I fully understand the separation there. But what I don't understand is that the government can't recognise that there's an inherent flaw in the environment in which these livestock exporters are operating in the current climate. And to somehow suggest that some of the others will take up the slack, in my view, is a misunderstanding by your parent department of the crisis that exists for livestock exporters. Of course that's going to impact on the others that are in the marketplace. They're going to find it more difficult to avail of whatever level of credit they currently have. I'm sure their bankers are all over them for the last couple of days, wondering is their exposure safe or has it increased in the risk profile. So it does need government intervention. It does need a belt and brace approach to ensure that the sector remains, as it always has been, as an outlet to ensure there's effective competition. And in this case, it's not so much an effective competition against the factories here, it's an effective competition against the beef producers in the Midlands who would compete to purchase the weanlings that you're well familiar with. So I do believe there's an encumbrance on the government to involve themselves here and develop a strategy in the same way as the previous government developed a strategy for output and production from the farming sector known as Harvest 2020. And in fairness, you've continued with that. But you need to look at the livestock export trade and you need to find an appropriate mechanism and strategy to protect what is a sector under very considerable threat at the moment.
Lady Robert Troy.
Thank you, Cahirda. Well, I too would have grave concerns in relation to the impact that this decision will have on the industry. This is an industry which has been in operation for almost 30 years. An industry which has ensured competition and an industry which has received very little support. And an industry, and this particular business, which accounts for 60 to 70% of the market. So, Minister, for you to come in here and merely say that you feel that others will take up the slack, I don't think is right, I don't think it's accurate, and I don't think it's fair. And there's all sorts of rumours going on in relation to the bank. And the customer, Deputy Dooley is right to say that this company was forced to go to the HSBC Bank, a bank that's based outside the state, because of the difficulties businesses here are facing in accessing credit. And I think that, the customer regulation comes under the central bank. And it's vital, Minister, that you give a commitment here to the House today that you'll return next week with a clear report on what actions the bank has taken in relation to this, to see was it right, was it proper that a receiver was appointed, and to let the House know that proper and due procedure was adhered to, because this is a very serious issue. This is an issue which has resulted in 30 jobs being lost from Mullingar and many, many more indirect jobs. This is an issue which has seen a company which accounts for 60 to 70% of the market being taken out of play. And can you ask why an examiner hasn't been appointed as opposed to a receiver? Because we all know when a receiver is appointed, the unsecured debts are the ones that are most unlikely to get paid. And the receiver's job, we all know, is number one is pay himself. Number two, pay the bank. And where does that leave the Marts and the farmers in the pecking order? Way down. And I don't have the confidence here, listening to you today, Minister, that you're giving it the urgency and you're giving it the priority that this needs. We're talking about a company 30 years in business, served the farming community well. We're talking about a company that accounts for 60 to 70% of the market share. And I just wonder whether you have what it takes to ensure that we resolve this issue. And I'd ask you to give a commitment to return to the House next week, with a report in relation to the central bank.
Thank you. Minister, reply.
Just say, I think there's two things. I think we need to be sensible in what we say and the way we react. The fact of the matter is that the receiver, and I hope, and everybody in this House hopes, that the receiver will be able to work their way through the difficulties and salvage the company. And that would be what would be the satisfactory outcome, whoever would own it, but that the job of exporting cattle would continue. And the receiver should be allowed to take that. The concern you raised there about the cattle prices, and I take that point, but I will refer Deputy Dooley, if he's keeping in contact with his people in County Clare, who this week, the manager of 6 Mile Bridge, Matt, quoted in the paper. He said, reacting to the TLT story, a spokesman for 6 Mile Bridge, Matt, said that there was a good trade at our mart on Saturday for all stock, with weaning prices especially strong. So that was in County Clare. So I would, before people come into this house and start saying cattle prices are down, they should equally check what's happening in their own constituency. And in fact, Deputy Try, I spoke to some of your constituents yesterday who I was presenting them with prizes, with certificates for good farming practices, and they also told me that cattle prices had actually risen in their constituency. So I think we shouldn't be, the main thing is that people are paid for their cattle as they're selling them, and I think the commitment that was given this morning on Morning Ireland by the Chief Executive of ICOS tells a very good story. The end result here, and I will certainly be monitoring as it goes along, what the due process of the receiver. I won't be interfering in it. I do hope that the business will be protected, and I think that farmers will be paid, and that's